couldn't build a boat on Gilligan's Island is because it would end the series. The reason they can't build an airplane out of the same material as the little black box is because it would be too heavy to fly. And obviously the chicken came before the egg.
If you really try to poke holes in everything, then it's all bad.
Well, really, it all comes down to who the writer says wins.
Power scaling is cringe, and here's why. To start this video off on a kind of even playing field, I'd just like to say I don't think I'm smarter or better or that my opinion is better than anyone else's. In fact, I agree with a lot of the points against power scaling. However, I do believe a lot of the critics might not understand the nuances of some of the more out there stuff. Some of the main complaints I see about power scaling would be it's childish and obsessive, the fan base is toxic, and that at the end of the day it really comes down to who the writers want to win. As an 18-year-old who makes glorified fanfics, I'm not going to deny any of these claims. However, again, I think there's a lot more nuance than just this. Two things that seem contradictory can be true at the same time. Power scaling can be toxic and damaging to communities while also being a useful writing tool. Power levels can exist to be contradicted and upscaled off of, while Akira Toriyama himself still believed that they were a useful tool. And let's just kind of debunk this power levels are bullshit agenda to begin with. Yes, eventually power levels become a narrative tool to show how strong the characters have become, to the eventual extent where you can't really put numbers on it. But this is because characters in verse overestimate the numbers they see, and because one of the biggest themes in Dragon Ball is surpassing your limits. To me, saying power levels are bullshit is like saying that math is bullshit or that math is debunked because you personally don't understand it. Power levels can be contradicted and can be a narrative tool to show that they don't matter, while also mattering as a tool to show the audience how strong a character is. And if you disagree with that, to some extent, you're disagreeing with Akira Toriyama himself, as he has the same sentiment. The next thing I'd like to cover is, does power scaling take away from other plot elements that we should be focusing on? Again, this is a yes, however. I would consider myself a power scaler, and as a power scaler, when I first watch a piece of media, I don't power scale it. I power scale it on the second watch around. There's no correct way to consume a piece of media. However, I do agree there are ways that are better in terms of how the writer wanted you to see it versus how you want to see it. I also think it's important to consume art in a power scaling sense, as you can call writers out on their bullshit. Suspension of disbelief is very, very important. However, if we, the audience, do not hold our art up to at least some standard and some rules, then most art would just end up being this gross, disgusting gray glob of inconsistencies. And most of the franchises we do scale are meant to be scaled in some way, shape, or form. Yes, it's important to put the main focus on the story and plot elements. It's also okay to want to know how strong your giant lizard is in a movie about a giant lizard who fights things. It is important for us as the audience to understand the power system in the media we consume, and in many cases the best way to do that is by power scaling. But the truth is, if we want people to understand the value of power scaling, we as a power scaling community need to stop being so toxic. In conclusion, power scaling is important, but if we want to be taken seriously, we need to stop being dicks. On a different note, what would y'all like to see from my next video? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and as always, bye!